who doesn't belong in Formula One? That is what we're looking at today. We're Turn One. We're your host, Thomas.
And Jeremiah.
Guys, if you like our content and you've seen some of our videos before, please hit that subscribe and like button and leave us a comment. We love to talk with everybody down there in the comment section, and it goes a long way for helping us keep cranking out this content. We teased this last week in our episode, but things change a lot in Formula One. Drivers come and go, teams come and go, sponsorships change, all this and that. We think right now there might be a few people holding on to the sport that are holding it back potentially. They're keeping spots from other drivers. Maybe they're underperforming. Maybe they're just washed up and old.
Here's problem number one. The fact that we had full retention of every single driver from 2023 going into 2024. Now, yes, we did have a switch up between Nick DeVries and Daniel Ricciardo, but going into 2024, every single driver held their spot on the exact same team with no changes. And in a sport that's ever changing like Formula One, that's not okay. There's plenty of people that could have gone, and these are those names.
Well, and you bring up a good point. We should have looked at this, but ever since we started watching, which we started watching live races in 2022.
Yeah.
We started Drive to Survive, which started in 2018. I don't remember a season where there was no driver changes.
Yeah. Where there was no driver changes? Yeah. No, this is the first time.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And now of course,
can't be a thing.
Yeah. So last year we had the Nick DeVries, Daniel Ricciardo switch, but that was really it. And then this year you come in with Daniel Ricciardo.
You're telling me that every single team is exactly perfectly happy with the current drivers that they have. Yeah, so why not make a change?
Okay, so what we have for this episode is we've got up the current driver standings, and we have not discussed our opinions really beforehand outside of what we just generally know about each other's thoughts. I say we just look through this list, and I'll start calling out some names. Can I kick us off with probably the one that we both agree on the most?
Max Verstappen's got to go.
I'm just so tired of the Dutch national anthem. It just beats me down, man. That's how people feel about the United States national anthem at the Olympics. They're just so tired of hearing it. No, Lance Stroll. I am so sick of this kid. And I know you can get into this. You had a little stint where you were kind of becoming a fan. You thought he was really turning around. You thought he was picking things up and getting the hang of it. No, he had an okay junior career. He really did. And he probably was suited for an F1 seat. But he's had a way longer run than anybody else with his credentials would have had, or his resume. He, of course, starts with Williams, and then Daddy buys Force India, turns it into Aston Martin, gets him a seat over there. And last year especially, okay, everything before last year, toss it out, doesn't matter. Last year shows you all that you need to know. Aston Martin starts out incredibly hot, with Alonso getting podium after podium for the first 8 or 9 races of the season, just destroying it. Where's Lance? Nowhere to be found.
He started out the season, he got like a 6th place here.
Then he DNF'd.
And then a DNF, and then
10th, 12th.
Yeah, and then it started going downhill from there.
So, and then 2 weeks ago, in China, he wrecks out Daniel Ricciardo, almost takes out Oscar Piastri, because he's not paying attention. I'm sorry, but he is regressing as a Formula One driver. And the fact that Alonso consistently finishes not 1 or 2, like most teams finish in within 2 or 3 spots of each other, right? Because, yeah, there's a little bit of driver skill. Same car, though. Consistently, Alonso is so much higher than him in races.
Yeah, it's becoming a real problem. And like you alluded to earlier, I did start to like Lance Stroll. Not like as in he's one of my favorite drivers, but I really felt like he was coming around, getting to grips with F1. I felt like he was making some moves. He's never been the guy constantly at the very back. Not even when Aston Martin was in a 7th place team. He never was the guy constantly coming in 20th and 19th. He never was. He was always up in like 17th. Okay, it's a little bit higher, but in the world of Formula One, it's worlds of difference. And he was making progress. Now Aston Martin has a great car. Started off the season last year coming in 6th, but he was trailing Alonso. And even this year, he's coming in 12th, 11th. What be that as it may, it's not enough. It's not what I want to see.
And with that, Aston Martin has firmly supplanted themselves as a midfield team at this point, which is great from where they were. They were a bottom feeder for forever, and now they're back in the midfield. Think of who could have done things with that seat. Picture Albon in that seat, even like a Pierre Gasly or even maybe Yuki. I think they would have done exponentially better than Lance Stroll has done in that car.
I mean, you're looking at a season standings. 10th place starts out with points. That's fine. You have Aston Martin as arguably probably the 5th best car on the grid, so that makes sense that he's coming in 10th because he rounds out the finish. Very next race, he retires. Then the race after that, he gets 6th. That's a good race. But also you had Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton DNFing. Take them out of the equation.
Australia, you almost have to throw away every year because there's so much chaos in Australia.
Then Japan, 12th. China, 15th. So in terms of, I mean, where did Fernando Alonso finish those races? Every single race, first of all, he's been in the points. 9th, 5th, 8th, 6th, 7th. And his teammate has only been in the points twice.
And he got the fastest lap in China.
Yeah.
At age 42.
Yeah. Now, I understand that Daddy brings a lot of money. In fact, Daddy brings so much money that he bought not the Aston Martin racing team, but he bought Aston Martin.
The car company, Aston Martin.
So with that, it's very hard to see him ever replacing Lance Stroll.
No.
So unfortunately, he's probably going to be around for a while, but that's a problem.
But if you're Lawrence... Okay, think about this. Lawrence is a businessman. He's smart. He's made billions of dollars.
That's savage.
Buy another team and put Lance on that one.
Oh no!
Or buy like a Formula E team. Buy an IndyCar team.
Jeez.
Let Aston Martin in Formula One dominate because it can. Like it could be a top 3 team. We saw what his initial investment did. It skyrocketed them. Okay, we'll move off of Lance. Who do you got?
I mean, I think the obvious one, unfortunately, is the American, Logan Sargeant.
I thought you were going to go with somebody else, and I was about to be blown away, but okay, we'll go with Logan.
No, it's got to be Logan Sargeant. And the reason why is you can't just go that unnoticed the entire career of F1 that you've had. I mean, he got 1 points finish in his entire career, and it was on a technicality. And you know, when you're comparing him to his teammate, we talk about you have to compare him to your teammate always because that's just how the cards fall in Formula One when you're in the same car. And when you're comparing him to his teammate last year, this year, it's just ugly.
There was this, okay, so you Europeans out there, great people.
Okay.
You complain a lot about how America has taken over F1. Hang on, tell me I'm wrong. There's a lot of hate online about how America has really taken over Formula One by having 3 Grand Prix and all that, right?
We're going to get so much hate for this.
They are on to something about Logan Sargeant being rushed. He was rushed as part of that American craze. Oh, we're going to have a Miami Grand Prix. Oh, we're going to have a Vegas Grand Prix. We need an American on the track. Williams rushed him to get his super license, which he shouldn't have really gotten, right, as far as the rules were concerned?
No, I think he ended up getting it fair and square. It's just that he finished 4th in the season, and we now have 2 years of Formula 2 champions that just don't even have a seat, and you're going to rush this guy that finished 4th just because he's American.
And he's kind of performed about... I mean, we had high hopes, like maybe he can pull something off, but when you look at his resume as a driver, he's performed about as well as you would have thought he would have, getting last almost all the time.
He's so bad that when his team had only 1 car and it was his, they made him get out and give it to the other guy.
They took his car away and gave it to the other driver.
Now, if you were doing like a Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc destroyed his car, couldn't go into the race, Carlos Sainz is going to stay in his car, and he's going to represent Ferrari. They're not going to go, all right, Carlos, you got to go, man. We're giving your seat to Charles Leclerc so that he can race. That's how bad he is.
Yeah, I can't argue with him. And a team like Williams, which is already struggling, you know, both financially and in terms of performance, and Williams is supposed to be a kind of a feeder series to Mercedes at this point. He's not. He doesn't have a chance.
No.
I mean, Albon still does, kind of, but Logan just
Albon
doesn't.
is way more deserving of that Mercedes
100%. Okay, let me look down the list here a little bit. There's one guy I want to skip. I want to skip Yuki in particular. We can have a longer discussion about him. I kind of want you to hit one of the harder hitting ones at the bottom, so I'm going to hit you with this one because you're not going to bring it up. Let's get rid of both of the Haas drivers.
Oh, no.
Okay, so here's the thing with Haas. Let me explain how Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg came to the Haas team. Both have had long tenures in Formula One, raced on multiple teams, yada yada. K-Mag was with Haas for a good bit, then got fired because he wasn't any good, and Haas said, we are an up-and-coming team. We want to get back to fighting for, some wins. We're going to get some young drivers because that's what Haas's place should be. Young drivers that are trying to work their way into sport, just like the team is. They have the whole deal with Nikita Mazepin when that whole situation goes down. So they boot him off the team, and they needed somebody to replace him quickly. So they call up K-Mag, who didn't have a lot going on. They said, hey, you want to drive Formula One again? He said, sure. So they bring him in. Then they had the whole deal with Mick. I believe I have this order of events correctly, where Mick wasn't cutting it. It wasn't his time. They rushed him. So they kicked Mick off the team, and they're like, we want tenured, experienced drivers at Haas now. So they go get Nico, who had a full, 10-year career before his 3 years off?
I don't remember how many years that he had before they finally kicked him out.
It was a good run. He was a F1 driver for a while.
I don't remember.
And then he took 2 or 3 years off, and then he gets the Haas call, and he comes back.
He got like 6 years off, but yeah, go ahead.
Look, nothing against them. They're getting okay results. I mean, they're not... K-Mag's gotten a point. Nico's gotten points in 3 races. Fine. But that's not what Haas should be about. Haas should be about generating buzz, getting sponsorships, building a better car, getting young up-and-comer drivers to go through the Ferrari system because they're part of the Ferrari system. They're in the U.S. They haven't leveraged the U.S. market at all. We mentioned this in one of our episodes. Why don't they have a Haas driving academy in the U.S.? These aren't the guys for that.
All right, I'm going to spin you a different yarn.
Where's that phrase come from?
So
I'm going to knit you a different quilt.
So here's what happened. They had Roman Grosjean and they had Kevin Magnussen. Yeah. The 2 drivers brought a lot of experience, but they weren't getting the job done. So they had to let them go. They wanted to start completely fresh, new car, new drivers. They went young. They went with Nikita Mazepin and they went with Mick Schumacher. Now, you said Mick Schumacher wasn't ready. He had just won Formula 2 as the champion. So
but in terms of Formula 1,
when he was
ready.
In Formula 1, or Formula 2, it took him some time to get to grips with the car, and then he won a championship. That's Mick's thing. It takes him a little bit. Then when he figures it out completely, he dominates. That's how he's been in his previous feeder series. He didn't get a lot of time in that car. He was immediately brought into F1 as the number 1 driver, which should not have been a thing because his teammate was absolutely atrocious. And so you have Mick not getting anybody to learn from whatsoever, has a terrible season. And then the next year they get rid of Nikita. It wasn't, who's available that we can go grab right now. It was, we need some experience on this team to help develop Mick.
We need a driver in this car.
No, because they could have went and picked up Nico. But they picked up K-Mag because they were comfortable with his ability to teach Mick. So they brought in K-Mag, and they had K-Mag and Mick, and Mick learned quite a bit, had a better season that year. But because he wasn't progressing as fast as Haas needed him to, unfortunately they had to get rid of him, and they brought in, because they needed immediate results, Gunther was feeling the pressure
from... You mean by progressing, he crashed 18 cars into the wall?
Hang on. Gunther was feeling pressure from Gene Haas, so they needed to bring in experience because they needed results right now or they were going to kick the whole Haas project out.
Yeah.
So they brought in Nico to fill Mick and placed him with K-Mag so that they could have 2 drivers that could get results immediately right now so they could get more funding. Now, Nico got a bad shakeup whenever he lost his seat because he was a really good driver. And that shows now that he's back because he's been away from the sport and yet he comes back in and is regularly getting points. Now, I know regularly, maybe that's a stretch, but when you're looking at the bottom 6 drivers, 7 drivers, yes, regularly. I mean, in 3 races out of 5, he's gotten points this season. And last season, he did really good. We saw a lot of results from Nico. So It's hard for me to agree with you on this one. I'll give you K-Mag, but I cannot give you Nico. I'll give you that K-Mag is washed. It's time for him to go. And that hurts to say because I love K-Mag. But I can't give you Nico because he is showing what he can do in this Haas car.
So your suggestion would be boot K-Mag and bring in the young up-and-comer driver to work with Nico.
I would agree with that 100%.
Okay.
I think if anybody to learn from, you should definitely be learning from the driver in a back marker car getting points regularly.
I can't fully disagree with you. I would love to fully disagree with you because I think both of those drivers could go. But we did, to your credit, Haas did experiment with both young up-and-comer drivers, and it was horrible.
Yeah, you need somebody to learn from.
You need somebody, especially when that team had, Gunther was great. I don't know how great of a ship Gunther ran with two rookie drivers, right? Like, I think Christian Horner or Toto could pull that off. I don't know if Gunther was the guy to pull that off, you know?
No.
Okay, throw another one at me.
Okay.
There's one I'm hoping you do, but I don't know if you will.
I'm not going to give you that one. I'll give you Zhou Guanyu.
Okay. Fair enough.
Zhou Guanyu has been getting better as the seasons go, and we see that, and he's been stuck on a backmarker car for years, and we see that as well. But I think he's just had his time. And that hurts to say, but whenever you see Valtteri Bottas every now and then in that terrible car sneaking into the points, whether it was Alfa Romeo and he was sneaking into the top 10 in qualifying, maybe not able to hold it because the car couldn't hold up, but getting into the top 10 in qualifying, and then the same thing in the state car, getting into the top 10, sneaking in there into Q3 in that state car, we see the potential if the driver is there. Now, Zhou is just not there. And he's been getting better. He's been getting better as the years go. Don't get me wrong. But I think anybody, if put in a position where they do one thing every single year for multiple years, will start to show improvement. So it's nothing special.
I agree. He's improved incrementally, slightly every year. It's not the leaps that you would need out of a driver to merit him a seat. This is where we can bring up Yuki, I guess, because I almost put them in the same boat. They've both been at their teams for a long time. Yuki at, Alpha, now RB, and Zhou at, where's Zhou? At Alfa Romeo, Kickstake.
Kickstake.
So similar situations, both back marker-ish teams. Now you could argue this year that RB has a halfway decent car, but that's still up for debate. I think with both of them, you're just not seeing the improvements you would like to see, but how much of that is driver and how much of that is car. And that's why I suggest this to you for both drivers. And this is why it works in the Zhou conversation too. It's either time that they try to get a seat at a different team to see if somebody can give them a shot and we see how they do in a different car, or they're just removed from the sport altogether. It's not working at their current teams. Yuki is not working at RB. Zhou isn't getting the results. I mean, Bottas consistently outperforms Zhou at Kick.
Right.
It is time for them to either try to leverage what they've done into a better seat somewhere else, or just a different seat so we can see something else from them, or those teams need to say, hey, you're not our guy. We've got so-and-so coming up through the F2 ranks that should replace you.
So I agree with you 100% on Zhou Guanyu, but this is we'll go ahead and make the full transition into Yuki Tsunoda because I completely disagree.
Wow.
Yeah. I used to feel exactly like that with Yuki Tsunoda, but it comes to a point where you start to realize, okay, there's a reason why Yuki is the benchmark. There's a reason why all the comparisons for Nick de Vries was with Yuki, reason why Liam Lawson was compared to Yuki. There's a reason Daniel Ricciardo is now and was being compared to Yuki. And it's because I genuinely think Yuki, it might be time to give him his flowers. This man is regularly doing pretty dang good in that B team Red Bull. So much so that I feel if you put him in a top car, two things are going to happen. One, he's going to get you good points because he's fast and he's aggressive. Two, because he's aggressive, he's going to crash out a lot. That's something he still needs to work out. I think if Yuki worked out the kinks on how to make safer overtakes or keep the car on the track, then with his speed, he would actually be a good addition to any top marker team. I don't see him as I don't see him on the same level as a Charles Leclerc or a Carlos Sainz, so don't get me wrong on this.
Oh.
I don't even see him on the same level as an Oscar Piastri, but I see him right under that. And I think that if you were to put him, let's say if you were to put him, you said this earlier, let's say if you put him with Fernando Alonso, I guarantee you there will not be a race where he's not in the top 10, unlike Lance Stroll.
And maybe. I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment. I don't know if he's making the progression that you say he is. Like I said in my hypothetical with both him and Zhou, put him on a different team. They just can't stay where they are.
Yeah.
He's getting nothing done at RB. He's not going to get anything done at RB. And you know what? So go back through the history of the Red Bull B team, whatever naming convention you want to go with. We saw Pierre Gasly get a win on that team.
And anomalies happen. They happen.
Like it can, like people can jump up and surprise you from that. So just the fact that it's a B team doesn't. I mean, it's in a weird spot because I don't know if either of those guys have a resume to get another seat somewhere else, which is kind of why they're staying where they're staying. But also the teams that have them maybe don't have someone they like better below them. And here's my hypothetical for you. You're starting a new Formula One team. You have your choice between Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson. Who are you signing?
Ooh, that's tough because we haven't seen a lot from Liam Lawson. Problem is you already know what I'm going to say. I'm going to go with Liam Lawson.
Because you know what he can do in a short amount of time, and you've seen what Yuki's done in 5 or 6 seasons.
I get it. But here's the thing. I can see Yuki Tsunoda going to an Audi in 25. I can see him going to an Aston Martin to replace Lance Stroll. I can 100% see that as a viable option for Yuki. Zhou, I see no viable options. That's the difference.
That's tough. And there's still a debate. Let us know in the comments if you know more about this. Is Zhou a paid driver? I don't know. There was rumblings that he was bringing in a ton of money from a Chinese company or a following and funding a lot of what, at the time, Alfa Romeo was doing.
That's a good question.
But I don't know if that's real because a lot of people say that, no, that's all fake. He's legit, but I don't know. So maybe money has something to do with it. But I know Yuki's not. Yuki was a Red Bull junior team guy. There's one more that I want to bring up.
I know you do. Go ahead.
Let's look across the way at RB. Daniel Ricciardo. And I hate it and you hate it. But let's have an honest discussion here. He's in his mid-30s at this point?
Somewhere around there.
I think 34 to 36.
I'm not going to enjoy this conversation.
Danny Rick at Red Bull was special. He was an entertainer, but not only was he a personality entertainer, he backed it up on the track.
7-time Grand Prix champion?
Or winner? Podiums. Pole sitter. Like, he did all of it when he was at Red Bull during a time where Red Bull didn't have the dominant car of the day.
Yeah, he was beating Lewis.
Right. It was Mercedes dominance. Ricciardo takes over after Vettel's run, of course, there. And he was the next guy, and he was battling Lewis and Valtteri, who just had a beast of a car year in and year out. And he was still able to get wins, still able to get podiums, was regularly finishing in the top 5 of the Drivers' Championships, keeping Red Bull in the conversation. And then you have Max, of course, come along, and we're not going to get into that whole story. But Daniel then starts to go through what you referred to a few weeks ago as his experimental phase, where he saw Max was taking over, so he decides to jump ship and go to Renault. That didn't work because Renault couldn't keep his car on the track. Then he goes to McLaren. He works with Lando for a little bit. Then McLaren, they want to go in the young driver direction with Lando and Oscar. So then he just gets booted out of a seat altogether. And eventually Red Bull brings him back in for the at the time, AlphaTauri team. And I'm sorry, but we just haven't seen anything out of him. Now, some of that's attributed to him getting hurt and being kicked out of a seat. He replaced Nick DeVries halfway through a year, so that was weird. Like, a lot of it's weird. But in the amount of time he's been on the track, I am not seeing enough to say Daniel Ricciardo is anywhere close to being back to a functional F1 driver.
Okay, now it's my turn.
I don't know which direction you're going to go.
I don't either. I'm going to play both sides.
He's sitting on the fence.
One, I am extremely hopeful for Daniel Ricciardo. There is a lot of season left. We are through 5 races at this point of this video, and there is plenty of races left. And he's looked really promising in these last 2 races up until he gets slapped and then has to DNF. So, that being said, I see things coming on the horizon for Daniel for this season. However, if you put a stop to it right now, if you put a pin in it right now, if I was in charge of Mercedes and I had to look at the data of right now to replace Lewis Hamilton, I'm not giving that seat to Daniel Ricciardo.
I'm not even giving him a look.
If I'm replacing Sergio Perez right now, I'm not giving that seat to Daniel Ricciardo. And that hurts for me to say because there is no, well, I'm probably wrong on this, but in my eyes, there is no bigger Daniel Ricciardo fan than me. So for me to say that he isn't deserving of a top seat right now, it hurts. It's crushing. But you have to look at the data. You have to look at the facts. And unless he comes back, which I am, extremely hopeful for, unless he comes back with a great backside of this season. I mean, like I said, I say backside, but we're only 5 races in.
And their car is decent. It's a midfield decent. Car.
And he's been out-qualifying Yuki recently.
It's
so,
just
like
the
I
race
said,
results.
I see results coming in the future. It's just not right now.
We talked about this whenever it was announced he was coming back and replacing Nick DeVries. What did we need to see out of Danny Rick to kind of keep earning that spot? And I think one of the things that we mentioned was kind of consistent top 10 finishes. And we've just been nowhere near that.
Which is a big ask for the Red Bull B team. Don't get us wrong.
But not from a guy that, okay, maybe for the Red Bull B team, but again, knowing the performance of that car, it can do it. And knowing Daniel's resume, which is race winner and team leader at Red Bull, you would think it could be done. It's almost what Valtteri was doing at Alpha all last year, getting 9th or 10th in every single race. That's what we need out of Daniel Ricciardo.
I understand, and that's a little bit harder because he also has to combat Haas and Nico Hulkenberg, and Nico's trying to give it everything he's got to make sure he solidifies himself for future seats, just like Danny is. So he has competition in the same car in the back of the field for that number 10 spot. And there's only one, because unlike previous seasons, we have 5 teams that if every driver does their job should take all points positions.
Yeah.
If every driver does their job. Both Red Bulls, both Ferraris, both McLarens, both Mercedes, both Aston Martins. If they all do their job.
You've got to have somebody either jump up or somebody fall down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the only way. So we're really talking about sneaking into the top 10. So to say consistently in the top 10, that's hard to say. Because really, no team besides those 5 I just listed should be in the top 10 ever for the entirety of the season.
That's where it goes to the driver outperforming the car.
Or one of the top teams suffering a bad day.
Or
just Lance Stroll.
Okay, so that's our list of who we think. Well, I mean, I guess every one of them's up for debate, but people we don't think should have a seat. I think you wanted to wrap us up with, if you're watching this, you might be like, "Oh, these guys are haters. They don't understand these seats." There's a lot of up-and-comer drivers that potentially deserve spots.
If you're looking at the F2 champions from 2017 and on, you've got Charles Leclerc that has a seat. George Russell that has a seat. Nick DeVries even had his opportunity. Mick Schumacher had his opportunity. And then as you go further down that list, you get to Felipe Drugovich, who won in 2022. Nowhere to be found. Hasn't been doing anything. He's been a reserve driver for 2-3 years now. And then last year's F2 winner, Teo Pourchaire. Again, nowhere to be found. Now, we are seeing some possible hints at some stuff, and we'll get into that in another video. A little sneak peek of that. Oliver Bearman did fill in for Carlos Sainz in a race this year and came in 7th, so things are looking hopeful for him. But we're completely discounting the 2 F2 champions of the previous 2 years.
And you mentioned 2 key ones. You might have mentioned more that I missed, but okay. Charles Leclerc won 2017 F2.
Yes.
2018, he's with Alfa Romeo. 2019, he's the Ferrari driver.
Was it only 1 year at Alfa?
It was 1 year at Alfa Romeo.
George Russell.
Because remember, 2019, he ran with Sebastian Vettel.
Right. George Russell, 2018 F2 champion, 2019 in Williams, 2020 in Williams, 2021 Mercedes?
Yeah, something like that.
No, because that was Max's first championship when Lewis with Valtteri.
Oh, that's true.
So 2022 with Mercedes. But he had to sit behind Valtteri.
And then Oscar, straight to McLaren.
He won in 20...
He had 1 year as a reserve driver.
He won. Nick DeVries won in 2019, and he sat out for quite a while.
Yeah.
Then 2020 2020 was Mick Schumacher. 2021 was Oscar Piastri, and he didn't get his seat until 2023, so he sat out a year.
Kind of the point that I was trying to make is when you look at Pourchaire or Drugovich, these guys could come in and have almost immediate impact.
Yes, they're champions.
Even if you spend 1 year at a backmarker team, you could suddenly be the next top driver. Because we saw that from multiple people that are on the
Or you could be the next Nick DeVries.
It could go either way, but you don't know unless you try. Right now, with all 20 drivers that we have on the grid, we know what we're going to get.
Yeah, Logan Sargeant number came in 4th, and he got a seat. We're just going to bypass completely Felipe Drugovich, who won that season.
And you look at Ollie Bearman, and you might say, yeah, we were talking about this before we started today, but his F2 results aren't that great this season. Doesn't matter. He got 7th in an F1 race.
Right.
He's good.
Yes.
Liam Lawson had 5 or 6 races last year and got points in half of them or so.
He had 5 races last year and got points in all but 1 or 2.
He's good. He's in line. So now you have Bearman, you have Lawson, Pourchaire,
and he beat Yuki in every one of those.
Yuki in every single one. You've got 4 or 5 drivers right there that are, some of which have already shown results in an F1 car, some of which have shown plenty of results in an F2 car to be deserving of a seat, and yet we're still sticking around with Lance Stroll, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, Danny Ricciardo, Logan Sargeant. So many spots that could be filled with these new up-and-comer drivers.
At a minimum, at a bare minimum, I want to see, unfortunately, Sargeant gone, and unfortunately, Zhou Guanyu gone. If Yuki stays, fine. If Nico stays, I would prefer that. If K-Mag stays, I would prefer that, but also if he leaves, fine. That's 3 seats. Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargeant, and K-Mag. If you replace those 3, you could bring in Felipe.
Can we be honest? Kick out Daniel Ricciardo and pair somebody else up with Yuki.
I'm not going to say it. So, anyway.
Yuki and Liam.
Hold on. Stay with me. Take out K-Mag. Take out Zhou. Take out Logan. You can instantly bring in Felipe Drugovich, Teo Pourchaire, and Liam Lawson.
You think Ollie Bearman needs a little more time?
Dang it. I forgot about all.
I mean, I would agree with Lawson over Bearman, but I don't know about the other two. That's tough.
I forgot about Bearman
because Bearman kind of jumped the line by getting that seat.
Bearman did jump the line 100%.
Just because he's in the Ferrari program,
right?
So
I don't know. Bearman deserves a spot. That's tough. That's tough.
But
so,
it's one race. That's also a lot to judge a whole
right,
skill set on.
Right. Now, before he did jump into that race, he was in F2 and he did sit on pole and was going to start on pole in that race until he got replaced. Until he filled in for Carlos Sainz. So that's tough. He would be having a great season this year had it not been for that. Plus, to go from an F2 car to an F1 car the next week, and then the next week after that back to an F2 car, that transition's got to be wild. So,
yeah, I don't know. It's tough. There's so many openings that I think could happen, and I don't know as we go through. I mean, we're getting close. I mean, we're not close necessarily to the mid-season break, but we're getting there, and that's where we see a lot of driver moves, and that's why last year was so disappointing. There was no moves.
Yes.
But this year we've already started it by Lewis jumping the gun, announcing that he's going to Ferrari,
right,
way ahead of schedule, like for when these announcements are normally made. You have Audi coming in.
Right, and we'll cover all these other moves that are expected in our next video.
So, guys, let us know in the comments who should be out of F1 and who should be in.
Guys, if you think we left George Russell off that list, I might agree with you, and I think it's time for him to be done. Bye, guys.